Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this online session where we discuss how to make your PV projects more competitive. And as we know, making your PV projects more competitive is absolutely essential. And the reason why it's essential is because as the scales are getting larger and the projects are multiplying, the competition is also getting fiercer. So what that means is that you need to get more bang for your buck in order to win the big projects, the interesting projects. So we have with us here today two people who have a lot of experience in tendering, in competing, and in winning the big projects. First, I'd like to introduce Rajesh. Please, Rajesh, can you tell us a little bit about you and about your company and where you're joining from today?
Sure, Willem. I'm Rajesh Vargas. I'm part of the business development team for Sterling and Wilson. I look after the Middle East region. Sterling and Wilson is a solar EPC company with a portfolio of about 6.5 gigawatts and an O&M portfolio of about 4.5 gigawatts. We have very humbly, I can tell you that we have established ourselves in about across 20 countries and exploring more.
Thank you very much, Rajesh. Actually, Rajesh, it's also, Sterling and Wilson also have one of the largest projects in the world right now, finishing up in Abu Dhabi. So that's more than 1,000 megawatts. And I'm sure that's not going to be the largest ever, but at the moment it is the largest. And I'd also like to introduce a company that needs no introduction, Mohammed from Aqua Power. Please, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your company, and where you're joining from?
Yes, thanks, Berlin and Rajesh. My name is Atari Mohammed. I work at Aqua Power in the business development team. I'm connecting from Dubai, and Aqua Power is a developer, investor, and operator of power plants and water desalination plants across all technologies. So we are technology neutral. We operate conventional and renewable power plants. We have also a significant share of renewables in our portfolio. Today, Aqua Power has built and is operating the biggest solar power plant, solar park in Morocco, and is also building the second one in Dubai, using both CSP and PV technologies. Since the last few years, the market has been very favorable in terms of renewables. And we today have offered in Saudi Arabia the lowest tariff on the utility scale basis of solar PV power plants worldwide.
Thank you, Mohammed. You've made it really easy for me. So lowest tariff, biggest park, mix of technologies. There is a lot of things going on here. Today, of course, we're focusing on PV. But we need to find out, is this a technology bet? Do you need to be looking into your technology? How do you make those extra savings on the pennies so that you can be more competitive? Is it a financial thing? Where do we look in financial terms are making these projects more competitive? Times, I'm sure that, particularly Sterling and Wilson as an EPC is going to have a lot to say about timing and getting things, done quickly. We'll hear. It's going to be really, really interesting. I can't wait. But before I tell Rajesh to go, this is the way it's going to go today. First is going to speak Rajesh, then Mohammed, then we will take questions from the audience. I would just like to just mention a few of the people that we have here today. Some of you don't like to sleep very much. I have people from the US here, but also from Australia. So that is, really far away. A few people here in Spain. Hi, I'm also based in Spain. I'm in Madrid. Both Rajesh and Mohammed are in Dubai. And we have people from Italy, from Jersey, from South Australia, from India, from Beirut. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is quite a busy webinar, but still same rules apply. Once we hear to Rajesh and Mohammed, we will take questions. So if you want to send questions, use the Q&A box at the bottom, okay? And we'll take as many as we can. So Rajesh, I'm gonna ask you to share your screen, please, and get ready for your presentation. And just whilst Rajesh gets his presentation up, I'd just like to remind you all that we are recording the session and we'll also send you the presentations as well. Do send us a little hi through the chat and also where you're joining from. It always gives us great pleasure to see it. I see someone else also from Saudi Arabia and the UK has said hi, so great. And I see a lot of well-known people, so welcome back. You're friends of ATA already. Rajesh, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, brother. I hope the screen is visible on the full screen mode.
Perfect. Yes, it's visible.
Yeah, okay, great.
Perfect.
Great. Okay, so firstly, morning, afternoon, evening, everyone, depending on where you're joining from. And thank you, Belen, for this opportunity to share our experience, the views. And thank you, Mohammed, for taking our time and sharing the platform. And thank you for everyone who has joined and hope the message sails through well. Before we get into the crux of the main topic, allow me to broadly take you across the journey of the goals that were set for solar PV. Around 2001, the goal was set for PV projects was to achieve primarily grid parity. And by 2016, the same was achieved. However, as always, the goalpost keeps shifting as soon as one achieves a goal. Based on a California system operator, a duck curve analogy was introduced, and the goalpost was now shifted to dispatchable solar power. For the understanding of the larger audience, duck curve is nothing but a growing gap in the power production that shows timing imbalance between peak demand and the renewable energy productions. So with the way the competitiveness that has been achieved in the solar PV space, dispatchable power looks like a reality not too far. Getting into the evolution aspect in terms of modules, the advancements in terms of modules or inverters or trackers, specifically to begin with on the module aspect, the advancements have been incremental. When you say in terms of the watt peak rating, be it mono, poly, poly-PERC, mono-PERC, thin film. However, then came the bifacial technology, which is not very old, I would say, but now people, which is more of a disruptive technology to begin with, but which is picking up very well amongst the developers, the EPCs, the lenders, the LTAs, and people are showing confidence more on the same. Touching upon the other major aspects, there are trackers. There has been some incremental innovations in the tracker system. The inverter block size has been increasing, thereby reducing the BOS. The cleaning system, how you clean the modules, that there has been a lot of innovation across that. And based on the above, we can see a trend in the reduction in the LCOE going down across the years. Now coming into the key drivers of the EPC cost. Supply, as you can clearly see, takes the significant position, which is primarily the modules and the trackers. And the other factors that play a role are the BOS, the logistics, the local works, the O&M, financials, and so forth. With the way bidding takes place in Middle East, and with every bid, we are seeing a world record tariff being broken, and hence it is all the more important to have the best suited technology, configuration for the site that is best cost optimized. Now coming to the optimization aspect, the first and foremost important aspect is the understanding of the best fit technology and configuration that is best suited for the project. Those who keenly are following the bids in the Middle East region would notice that it is not the same technology or the configuration that is being built or being won in, say, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Oman, Egypt, and so forth. The key is to first understand what best fits and then to further optimize on the key aspects of the BOS system, say by increasing the GCR ratio. When we say best fit, it does not necessarily indicate to the low cost, rather the LCOE that has been achieved. Now on the local cost, touching upon the local cost aspect, which is primarily the civil, the electromechanical installation works. Now, the general approach is to go into the market and understand the civil and electromechanical costs through the local contractors. However, that is not an assurance that you get the best quotes. till you have some firm tie-up with some local subcontractor, which is not a general practice that is followed. Hence, what we generally do is a bottom-up approach, wherein we do a man-hour costing, we understand the man-hour requirement for a particular activity, the level of skills that is required, so we have a mix of skilled, unskilled, semi-skilled, and based on the manpower cost, we understand through the bottom-up approach, we understand the cost for each and every activity that is locally done. This allows us to challenge the quotes that is received from the local contractors and be more educative while negotiating with them. Now, in terms of the supply aspect, of course, we all know that where to buy the modules from and where you get the most competitive modules. However, it will be surprising to know that some of the key components, such as the switch gears, structures, can be looked outside the Asia market. In fact, Europe is one market that you can certainly explore and get some competitive components for the competitive key components. On the taxation aspect, very important to understand the taxation law of the country. Since within Middle East itself, in certain countries, you would find certain differences on the way the taxation is handled. And this can actually have a significant impact on the overall structure that you propose for the project. Attention needs to be given on key aspects of people that people generally overlook on, which is such as the logistics numbers, the insurance, the bond cost. Sometimes what happens is people often put in the numbers that they have through the previous experiences. However, as I said, for each country has its nuances and one needs to go into depth for each of these aspects as well. On the performance aspect of the plant, there are always rooms for you to squeeze in the last loss optimization. Going with manufacturer-driven losses is certainly not helping anyone. If I go with the module supplier given losses, certainly that is not differentiating us with somebody else. Hence, that is where the practicality comes into the picture and you optimize the losses accordingly. In terms of the risk assessment, it is important that we go into the depth of each aspect, including in terms of soil. So giving you a classical example, when you have a land, when a site has been identified, it is very important to understand corrosion analysis, the ER, that is the earth resistivity, the thermal resistivity. These are certain aspects that might not come in along with a particular bid. Hence, it is important to understand the cost around it and what are we looking here at in terms of corrosion or ER or TR. It is very easy to make assumptions and then build contingencies around it. However, what is it? Then that will not certainly give you a world record tariff or help you in achieving one. So hence, it is important to understand these aspects. You build the cost accordingly, and then you cover your proposal comprehensively, thereby ruling out any contingencies and having a proper proposal. Now, a classical example again is a reactive power compensation. Again, I do not want to go into too much of depth into the technical aspect, but for every region, it's a different system that can be proposed in terms of reactive power compensation itself, through the inverters or through the capacitor banks. Coming to the O&M aspect, there has been a time when people have been talking about truck cleaning system using water through dry cleaning, but now robot cleaning system has evolved quite well. Robot system that was back in the laboratory, I would say a couple of years back, but now it's a reality now. People are installing on large scale projects robot cleaning methodology, allowing zero manpower on the field, and across 25 years a stable system that allows a cleaning and having a very optimal soiling loss. Coming to my last slide, which is on the levelized cost of electricity between various systems. Now, certainly you would notice that under the solar PV, it's about $4 per unit. However, if you look into the Middle East region, it's as Mohammed just mentioned in the beginning, they just crossed the world record tariff. And believe me, for every bid that happens in Middle East, world record tariffs are being broken. So it is very important that every nuance, every aspect of the solar project that you bid needs to be optimized. Every aspect needs to be looked into so that you have a comprehensive solution, no contingencies, and have a winning bid. Now also, with the growing competitiveness in the solar PV segment, it's paving a way to the dispatchable solar power, allowing to bridge the gap under the duck curve graph, which I had mentioned in my first slide. Dispatchable generation for the larger audience is nothing but a source of electricity that can be used on demand and dispatched at the request of the power grid operators, which has always been lacking when solar is working alone or any renewable source is working alone. But with dispatchable generation, I think that will give a tough competition to the conventional source of power. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rajesh. I adore that last slide, but I think it's a little bit old by now. I've seen a few things there that I'm like, push them back, but really, really good. It's good news for us, right, to see so much shortening costs. So thank you very much. Right, I'm going to ask Mohammed to do your presentations. I know there's been a few questions in the chat. Please send them through the Q&A box now, and we will ask them thereafter. Mohammed, please prepare. Perfect. And I have a few already for you guys, and I think I'm going to have to ask them because I know usually I always give preference to the questions from the public, but I have one or two questions that I think I am itching to ask. So I will do that before I ask the following questions. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Okay, thank you, Belen, and thank you, Rajesh, for I would say a more detailed presentation about the general aspects that go into the pricing of the PV power projects. I made a more simple and I would say a more high-level presentation, which shows the main features that go into the competitiveness of PV, which I would mention. But before, I mean, this is just an overview of the Aqua Power company, which I believe I've already introduced, so no need to duplicate. From our perspective as a developer, there are a number of items that we focus on in order to try to optimize the tariff of the PV power plants. Obviously, the first one is the balance of system, or the engineering and the construction of the power plant. That is something that we try to reduce, and Rajesh has given a perfect insight as to what go into this balance of system, going from the equipment outside the PV modules and through the manpower and the optimization of the construction activities. The second one is the PV module price. As you have seen in Rajesh's presentation, it's one of the major costs in PV power plants, and therefore the PV module price is something that we try to optimize, not only looking from one project perspective, but we also try to think in bulk and think in bigger quantity in order to be able to individually for each project try to reduce this cost. Then obviously the cost of the project and the cost of the plant will depend on the financing terms. This has not as much a big impact as the EPC cost, but it still is a very important aspect of the project. And obviously the project conditions, for instance, you have countries that give you the land for free. Some countries you need to have a lease agreement. Sometimes the project conditions in terms of solar resource are better than other ones. Sometimes the risk of the project in that country is higher and lower. So all of these parallel considerations play into pricing the tariff that would be offered to the government utility. Then the fourth point is the generation, and that's something that depends first on the module efficiency, but also now, as most of you who are following the industry closer, you have heard about bifacial modules, you have heard about ways we can play with the DC-AC ratio in order to be able to improve the cost of electricity. And then sometimes also the power plants don't come alone. They don't generate only electricity, but they generate sustainability attributes. And these sustainability attributes, sometimes they can be priced and they can be considered as extra revenue and extra income for the project. Then the fifth item is the design and the guarantees that would be required by either the developer or by either the government utility. The more guarantees you ask for, the pricey, the costlier your project will be. And obviously the design will depend on whether it is the project allows, for example, on the mountain structure, does it allow for single axis tracker? Does it allow for fixed tilt? So all of these are items which go into play and that affect the price of the power plant significantly. Now, these are more or less from our perspective what goes into the pricing. Now, how the title of the presentation is how to make it more competitive. So in the balance of system price, from our perspective, we believe that the future of construction and operation of power plants resides in automation. Automation will allow faster construction, it will allow less manpower, and it will allow better soiling during the operation and maintenance phase. So this is what we are focusing on in our current and future PV projects. We're talking even today about zero-man PV power plants during operation. So they can be perfectly standalone and they can be remotely monitored and operated. For the PV module price, obviously there is a component of this which depends on the market fluctuation. As the market demands more PV, the price will keep going down, or it will be stabilized around a reasonable price. But obviously, from our perspective, when we look at one project, we try to look at all the projects in the pipeline and try to ensure that when we buy in big quantities, we have discounts that allow us to reduce the price of the PV modules, as I had explained earlier. For the financing and project conditions, there are some items that the governments and the clients could do in order to make the projects more appealing. They could have better policies, they could offer more incentive and conditions, sometimes only by placing the PV power plant in a location which is convenient for connection or convenient from an environmental and social perspective, makes the project better and reduces the cost and the risk. So this is something that is more often not in the control of the developer, but something that we try to push with our stakeholders in order for them to get the best out of the PV power plants. For the generation and other revenues, obviously the PV modules keep getting better in efficiency. They keep getting better in getting the best out of every square meter of or every square millimeter of cells that they offer. And new materials come and are discovered every year. The value creation out of the PV power plant is very important. The more you use out of the local manpower, the more, for example, women involvement you have, the more megawatt hours you generate out of green energy in general creates value, and that value is important for consumers and for people who still rely on fossil fuels for their operations. And therefore, this is something that is also creating extra revenue. And then the way you operate the power plant is very important. If you're using, for example, robotic cleaning, you will be able to reduce your soiling significantly. If you are using string inverters, for example, you'll be able to know where is the problem, for example, if there is any issue with the strings or with the tables. So these are kind of small optimizations that affect the generation and that creates more revenue for the project. Then at the end, design and guarantees, obviously now we hear about 20-25 years lifetime. Recently, the PV modules now offer guarantees up to 30 years. In one of the solar power plants that we are now building, we have managed to get 35 years lifetime. So this is something that optimizes the financing, the general economics of the projects, and therefore allows for a better tariff over the lifetime. And then as efficiency, as modules are proven more and more and are used in a wider scale, then they prove their technical capability, and therefore any guarantees that would be required from the stakeholders, from the lenders of the project, that would be relaxed in order to be able to, for the EPC and for the developer to take more risk on the longest term. So on a high level basis, and more or less, this is the kind of aspects that we look into. They are interlinked and intertwined between each other, but we try to look at them in this way whenever we bid for a project or whether we develop a project on a standalone basis, in order to get the best out of the project. So that's it from my side.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Can you stop sharing the screen, and now we can go into questions and answers. Actually, Rajesh has been answering some of the questions, but I'd like to start with my own, if that's okay. I want to know, and I think many people in the audience also do, but maybe they're asking whether when you guys are looking at a project, at a tender from the government of a certain size, you are thinking, okay, doing what everyone would have done before, right? That when you approach that tender, you go and you start adding what you need to get there, and you start pricing everything, and then arriving at a price. So therefore, you kind of arrive at a price after looking at all of the items, or you set yourself a goal, and then you see how you're going to do it. In other words, the price is what drives the decisions in the supply chain, or the other way around, if that makes sense. Because it seems to me that there has been like a little change in the way that people think about tenders. And before, they were very much doing their counts and coming up and saying, okay, I can do this for 10 cents. And now it's the other way around. This is kind of like, okay, who can make it cheaper? And then figuring out a way of making it work, if that makes sense. So Mohammed, you want to start, and then maybe Rajesh can add?
Yeah, so yeah, I understand from your perspective, it feels like we're just throwing competitive numbers and trying to figure out how to do it later. But we typically, because when we submit our tariff, it's a tariff that we commit to give to the client, and that is fixed at the moment of the bid submission. And whatever assumption we take at the bid submission is something that we need to be able to back on the basis of the financing terms that we get before the bid submission, on the basis of what we think will be achievable. So the numbers, I mean, yes, because there is a lot of projects, and because the PV is now getting bigger and bigger in size, it looks like people are just throwing numbers because believing that the PV will still continue to drop. But from our perspective, we think we offer the tariff that is suitable for the project and of the context. For example, we have bid for projects after the lowest tariff in Saudi Arabia, and we offer tariffs which are higher than that, because the context is different and the conditions are different. So yes, I mean, we notice overall there's a trend in reducing of the tariffs, and namely driven by the demand, which is increasing. But it's something that is justifiable, and it's something that makes sense from an economic perspective.
Okay, so Rajesh, you can answer this question as well, but also with the other thing that, of course, in EPCs, we're seeing the margins sort of like lower and lower and lower, right, over time. So what is your reaction to that? I mean, how do you guys make in the numbers?
Well, on a lighter side, very soon probably the EPCs would start funding the project also. Forget about working on a break-even aspect. But that was on a lighter mode. See, as Mohammed just rightly mentioned regarding the tariffs going down, which is good for the market, tariffs are going down, but this does not mean that you throw up a tariff and you then win and then you make a solution. What is important is you create a solution that allows you to achieve a competitive tariff. Now, as I was presenting, you would notice that, as I mentioned, the system that has been designed, the system that has been used, the technology, be it Saudi Arabia, be it Oman, Egypt, or Abu Dhabi, the technology, the system itself is different. And the reason is every bid has its nuances, every bid has its uniqueness that needs to be worked upon. Once when you understand the crux of the bid, you work a system based on that, and you create a winning tariff. It's not that you first decide a tariff and then you make a system. Rather, you have to create a system that allows you to have a winning tariff. And with the way Middle East is working, as I said, with every bid, the world record tariffs are being broken. And believe you in me, these tariffs are not broken just because they want to throw a tariff, but because there are systems and technologies that one can adapt in that particular project that allows them to achieve that number.
Okay. Very good. So there are things happening that are pushing the prices down, which is good for you because it means that Sterling and Wilson and other EPCs still can be in business, hopefully for a very long time. What are the biggest challenges did you guys find to deliver the project on cost and on time, considering this ever decreasing challenges? I'd like Rajesh to start, and then we can actually ask Mohammed, because I've seen you guys are doing really well in terms of times, in terms of, so what are the challenges that you are finding and how are you overcoming those?
Sure. See, some of the key challenges that you can face when you enter into a new market. Say, for example, I can give you a classical example of, say, Oman. Oman doesn't have a history of solar PV projects, and Oman doesn't have any experience of what utility scale solar PV projects are. So when you go and bid for a project in Oman and if you win, what happens is you have submitted a proposal or a tariff that is so finely tuned that there is no contingency, there is no room for anybody to make errors. And hence, when you go into when you win with that particular tariff, you need to execute now without any room for errors. Going into that country, understanding the nuances is very, very critical. Working under, I can give you a classical example. One of the projects that we are doing in Middle East, there is a transformer which has a rating of 500 MVA 220 kV class. That's the first time that a transformer of that size is coming into the country, and there were a lot of detailing that had to be given in order to get it into the country itself. Hence, these are the aspects that one needs to absolutely look into, and especially when you're running against a time frame as well, because in a solar PV project, the gestation period is very small. These are all very crunched timeline projects because that allows the developer to reduce on the IDC aspect as well. And hence, the EPC is always made to crunch on the project schedule aspect. Now, delivering on such a crunched project schedule aspect, it is very important that you have your construction experience be there. You have your logistics team in place, you have your SCM all falling in line correctly in order to meet the project in budget and in time. Yeah.
So managing the whole project is what's most difficult. Mohammed, do you have anything to add here? And then I'll just take questions from the audience as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, the solar PV technology is not very complicated to implement. It is very modular and very easy. So from an installation and from the execution of works perspective, the challenges and the difficulties of solar PV are not very big. Depending on the country, you might face some issues. For example, if as Darshi said, if they never imported solar modules before, you might face some issues in custom duties. You might face issues, but this is the nature of any project with the environmental and social aspects. But overall, solar PV projects are very easy to implement, and there is very little risk associated to them. Therefore, more often than not, we're able, and our EPCs also are able to build them on time, or sometimes even ahead of time, as was the case in one of our projects here in Dubai. Sometimes we face some delays, but those delays are not big hurdles. Those are typical delays that you would find in any construction, but nothing really challenging when it comes to solar PV projects.
That is great, actually, guys. So before we go on to the questions, and I will move now, there is 2,000 megawatts. We were talking before the webinar coming up in Abu Dhabi, 900 in Dubai. So rule of thumb, what do you think is the price that could be hit for those projects? Because they're very large, like between what numbers?
Well, it depends on what would be the conditions of the request for proposals.
No, of course.
But yeah.
You know that they like to maximize, right? The
yeah,
shock factor, so.
Sure. But I think in both those projects, we might be able to see tariffs which are even lower than what is now recorded as the lowest, because the capacity is very big, and there's a lot of synergies that can be captured. And as you know, also there is the fact that a lot of foreseen capacity for PV modules in China has been cut. So there is a lot of oversupply in the PV modules in general. So this kind of projects represent more or less capacity of manufacturing of one supplier in China. So this is very, very important. So I think that the incentives for it to be even reduced is something that that is very likely. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the tariffs would be lower or significantly lower than the 2.34 that is recorded in Saudi Arabia right now.
Here I was thinking it was 1.7. So it's 2.6 is 2. What is the lowest again?
The 2.34 cents per.
2.34. Right. So let's see if we get to the $2. What do you reckon, Rajesh? We'll get to the $2?
Well, I would probably say free. The way it's trending, and as I said, world records are getting broken with every bit that happens in this region. More than just the tariff going down, what I still feel is the good thing is that we are inclining towards dispatchable solar power. So I wouldn't be very surprised if the 2 gigawatt project that is going to come into the bid in Abu Dhabi would have some storage aspect to it as well. I wouldn't be surprised because that allows you the dispatchable solar power, and that might not give you the lowest tariff, but that allows you to compete now with the conventional system, allowing the grid to have more flexibility with solar power. So yeah, solar power price standalone will surely come down. There's no doubt to it. And but that's giving a space, a room for dispatchable power as well.
If you're doing it for free, I'll have to. Okay. So here it says, Brian sends a question that says, what single parameter has the biggest impact on any project cost reduction drive for construction if you look at a single project and assume that contingency is set aside? So in other words, what is the biggest impact, to drive down costs during construction? So that's, suppose, Rajesh, you can take that question.
See, on the EPC front, on the EPC cost, where you can optimize is on various aspects, certainly on your supply aspect when you go into the EPC phase, but more importantly, construction, how you manage the manpower, how you manage the skilled, the unskilled, and the semi-skilled. Without taking the project name, I can give you an example wherein we had to flew in some Bulgarians for this particular project, wherein a bunch of Bulgarians, along with the local unskilled people, they formed a gang, allowing the efficiency to go up. So you can probably have 100 people working on a particular task without the understanding of how to do it, or you can create a gang which have the skill requisite enough to do it more efficiently. I think that is where we can optimize on the construction aspect. Overall, on the logistics, you can save once when you go into the depth. On the supply aspect, with the fluctuating module price, it's tough to still have a reduction in the overall EPC price, because we all understand the way the module prices have got its blips. Back in 2017, there was a blip. Now again, recently, late last year, there was again a rise in the module price. So there are some uncertainties in the EPC model. However, they set off more or less to a certain aspect. But yes, there are rooms for saving. But again, as I said, when you go into a bid, if there are rooms, you need to ensure that the rooms are absolutely again optimized. Otherwise, you're not getting a world record tariff. So there is a very thin room, but there still can be a room that can be made available.
Excellent. Let me ask you about bifacials. There's been a lot talked about them, and they have a lot of promise, and the costs look good, but are those bankable? Can we use them already for the next projects? Do you want to start, or Mohammed? Who wants to take the question? You do? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Start, Rajesh. Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of bifacial, I think it was probably maybe 1 year back, probably it was on very small scale. However, now I would say that the confidence on the bifaciality aspect is growing very high,
But what one needs to understand is bifacial does not need to be seen alone as a bifacial module. Bifacial needs to be seen as a complete system wherein you have an optimized tracker system, an optimized height for the tracker system, an optimized albedo. You might have a good bifacial module, but if you do not have the albedo, then you're losing out on any gain. So what is important? The first and foremost step is to understand what is albedo in that particular site. There are ways of understanding the albedo, and it used to be through desktop study, but now on real practical life, you can understand what is the albedo of that surface. Once you understand the albedo of the surface, you understand what access height you could probably install the bifacial module, which bifacial module to go with, whether N type or P type, depending upon the generation and the cost. Also on the inverter aspect, you can optimize. So overall, having a bifacial module flat on the surface is not going to give anyone any gain. So it's a mix of module, it's a mix of tracker, and the entire design, how you revolve around it, that gives you this gain. So enough due diligence needs to be done if you want to bank on the bifaciality aspect, and it's not just restricted to a module.
Go for it, Mohammed. Add, if you like.
Yeah, so I mean, we are already banking bifacial projects today. We're using already bifacial in two of our power plants that are being built now. So in the Middle East. So this is something that is, for now, bifacial is something that is of actuality, if not of the near past. We're already looking, as Raji said, as to how get the best out of the bifacial. One very aspect of it, one very important aspect is, as you mentioned, the albedo, which is basically how much reflection you get out of the ground in order to increase your generation. But then again, bifacial modules tend to be bigger in size, so you need more BOS for the structure. And then obviously you save also on land. So these are parameters that you need to take into account. But overall, from an LCOE perspective, bifacial more often than not make more sense. So yeah, this is, for us, bifacial is a technology that is proven, that we have been able to bank as other monofacial modules.
Thank you very much. Okay, so one question to the two of you. You talked about automation, and there is a few questions here, coming and going about cleaning, and one of the things, cleaning and maintenance are an issue, and particularly you, Mohammed, you said that these have to become like manless processes. So can you tell us a bit about what is the status of the technology now? What are you favoring, and what are you hoping to see in the next few months, couple of years, in terms of this? Because it's pretty labor intensive, I understand, at the moment. Yeah,
so basically, I mean, in terms of cleaning, you would have normally three options. Either you do 100% manual cleaning, so you have people who clean manually the PV panels, but this is something that is not being done anymore. Then you would have trucks cleaning, so you have one truck which goes between the rows and cleans the PV. In that case, you just need a driver and the truck does the rest. And then you also have now the semi-automated or fully automated robots. So basically, these are robots that are either installed on the mounting structure near the PV panels, and then at the level of each table, they clean they clean on a daily or on a weekly basis, depending on the soiling that you have. And in terms of status, so I mean, in the project that we have already built this year and last year, we're already considering that we'll be using robots. So this is something that in Europe and in South America, already utility scale power plants that are being cleaned by robots. Most of them is semi-automated, meaning you still need people to carry the robots between the tables. But now we already have considerations for fully automated. So you have robots that are installed at the level of each table, and that go through the whole strings and clean, and the whole plant can be 100% monitored, remotely monitored. So you have the information of the generation. You have at the level of, if you're using string inverter, for example, you would know at the level of each table if something goes wrong. The robots are also able to transmit information. You can also use drones in order to be able to see what is your soiling rate at the level of each modules. So this looks like something from the future, but this is something from the present. This has already been implemented in many projects, and from our perspective, this is the way we consider cleaning of the PV modules going forward.
Rajesh, please add your point. I know that automation was very high on Sterling & Wilson's agenda and many conversations that we had before. So how are you working on that?
Oh, of course. In fact, a couple of years back, I can tell you that robots were probably in the laboratory, but now finally they have come out of the laboratory and now being installed in the sites. Some of the largest projects in the world have got robotic cleaning systems. The robot cleaning system is still getting developed. And when I say getting developed in terms of fixed tilt, you can have a fully automatic robot system. And as Mohammed just mentioned, there are semi-automatic robot system, which is a mix of manual labor and a robot system. But it wouldn't be very far for having a fully automatic robot system, even for a tracker solution. So for not much of a tracker system, you have a fully automatic. It needs to be still further explored and understood how it can be fully automatic. For certain system, particular designs you can have, but it's not for all designs. For a tracker system, you can have a fully automatic. But I think that will be very soon established as well. Very soon, one could also see on a lighter note, a drone system, probably a drone system that is cleaning the modules and going and flying and going to the next module and cleaning it. So probably that would be the next, but yeah, robot as of now is something that people want to explore further. It is avoiding any manual labor at the site. A dry cleaning methodology is used, hence you do not, it's water free. So yeah, it's a system that one looks into.
Okay, let me just get a couple of questions and then we'll have to finish because we're out of time. But so there's a question here about Albedo, and I know Albedo, it's complicated, you know, people have a lot of questions. Albedo changes depending on the hour of the day, also varies from month to month. Additionally, it is very affected by the way that you can measure it, height, point from the PV module, etc. How do you gain enough comfort on Albedo estimations to be able to consider a project bankable? Who wants to take it? Put your hand up.
I'll start first. Yeah. So on the Albedo side, sometimes the client themselves, they run Albedo tests on site when they issue the request for proposal. So they already have an idea about how much Albedo you would get. Albedo measurements is not something which is very complicated. It depends more often than not on how much the ground can reflect. And so this is a measurement that can be done very quickly in no later than a few weeks or a few months if you want to capture the seasonality. But this is something that either the developer, either the client gives you this indication, or we can also do it ourselves. And on that basis, we have an idea about the site, an idea about the Albedo. Also, because it depends more on the ground. So if you have information about only the soil that constitutes the site, that also gives you a fair idea about how much Albedo you would get. So this is information that goes into considering how much Albedo we would get, and it is banked on that basis. Then another parameter is the panel itself. So irrespective of how much reflection you have, it depends on how much the backside of the panel can capture. And sometimes you have guarantees from the PV module suppliers, which guarantee this kind of Albedo. So each measurements on site plus information about the soil, together with what the PV module supplier can guarantee, which goes into play into getting a fair and bankable assumption on how much Albedo you would have.
Thank you. Do you want to add anything, Rajesh?
Yeah, just to add a point, it's very important when we say finding the albedo. I think that's the soul of what bifaciality is all about. What is the gain that you'll be expecting or getting? When calculating the albedo, it's very important that you do a test at the site. There are tests that can be conducted. But when you say across 1,000 acres of site, how do you do the test? You cannot have albedo meters installed in every square meter. So there are ways of understanding the albedo that will be running throughout the site, and it depends also on whether there is any growth in the soil, whether there's any vegetation, how much clearance needs to be done of the vegetation, how regularly that needs to be, because if there is a vegetation that comes in between, then the albedo immediately changes. So if it's a barren land, there wouldn't be much change. But if it's a land in US where suddenly the crop grows, and then you need to understand how frequently you'll be cutting them to maintain the same albedo that you were estimating. So there is much more to it in the depth to understand an albedo. It is very important to have a calculative analysis, and based on that, your entire LCOE is worked out.
Fabulous, thank you. All right, last question for the two of you, and this is a question that I've been asking myself for a while, you know, speaking to different sort of manufacturers of transformers and things on the old school energy side, you know. As the equipment is coming down for PV, generally, the sort of old school voltage stations, yes, here low voltage, high voltage stations, will have a greater impact on budget over time. Do you spend any time trying to optimize what is a really old technology, you know, stations, substations, to try and also lower the costs from that perspective? Because it seems to me it's a technology that hasn't changed in 100 years. Rajesh has become... The question here says exactly that. How are you optimizing this part of the project?
Okay, so in terms of the voltage, I think there has been, if I'm not wrong, if you're referring to the DC side, if you're referring to a 1000 volt system to a 1500 volt system, so the advancement has been made. People used to be using 1000 volt system, always dependent. About probably 3-4 years back, it was all about 1000 volt systems. 1500 volt systems were not there, and they were very pricey, but today 1500 volt is commercially very, very viable, and there are a lot of manufacturers developing 1500 volt system. However, further increasing this 1500 volt system to a 2000 or 5000, then you are looking at a risk on the DC side as well in terms of the safety. So that needs to be looked into. That is being looked into. I wouldn't say there is not going to be a development, but as of now, 1500 volt system is commercially being used, and there could be a development, but safety is one factor that needs to be looked into when you go advanced from 1500 volts. So if I get the question correctly, I'm assuming that the question was more on the DC side, because on the NB side, it depends on what voltage you are evacuating the power. So based on what is the final evacuation voltage, you decide your intermediary voltage, you design accordingly, and based on the switchgear cost and all of that, you design your intermediary voltage system. But on the DC side, as I said, from 1000 volt, we have now evolved to 1500 volt. Going further, keeping the safety aspect in mind, I think it can be further looked into, and I'm sure it is being looked.
Thank you very much. Mohammed, I don't know if you want to add anything, otherwise? Yes?
I mean, just keep in mind that in solar PV power plants, most of the cost is PV modules. In a situation where you don't have a substation, which is HV transformer, the inverter cost and the LV, MV transformer cost is very insignificant in the context of the total project cost. Obviously, that doesn't mean that there isn't anything that's happening into that. We have seen shifting from, for example, from center inverter to string inverter for various reasons, but string inverters and 1500 voltage, as Rajit mentioned, are something that are coming more and more in this technology advancement. But the technology itself is not prone to very high development. It's conversion from DC to AC, and it's like asking for advancements in cables. So cables, they will transmit energy, and yeah, you can optimize a little bit on the efficiency, but that would be it. But from the most important aspect that is still continuing to show strides is basically the PV modules and the logistics, which are more important. Obviously, we keep a look into every aspect of the project, including the transformers and the inverters, but our focus is towards more the other aspects.
Thank you very much. Well, I have to say, Rajesh and Mohammed, that we had a few people saying that very good presentations, you know, and admiring your comments and whatnot. So thank you very much for your time. You are experts on this, and we're really very much looking forward to seeing what happens on the tenders, the next tenders, and also finalizing your projects in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for everybody else who is also out there. We will send you the presentations, and we'll send you the webinars, and we hope to see you next time around. Thank you.
Thanks, Belen. Thanks, Mohammed. Thanks, everyone.